Hello, and welcome everybody to the first of four webinars hosted by Blue Corona in partnership with the Air Conditioning Contractors of America. I am Brandon Doyle from Blue Corona, and I'm located in our Charlotte, North Carolina office, and today we are talking about digital competitive analysis, what it is and how this new wave of competitive intel can help you measurably improve your ROI from virtually any digital marketing campaign you're running. We are joined by Tyler Yost, a fellow Charlotte colleague of mine and the Director of Client Services at Blue Corona. Hey, Tyler, welcome.
Hey, Brandon, good to be here.
So first, let me tell people, Tyler, a little bit about us and what we do here at Blue Corona. We help small and medium-sized businesses, in other words, ACCA member companies, grow faster than their competition using next-gen technology. We are a six-time Inc. 5000 recipient, and since we first opened our doors in 2008, we've helped hundreds of small businesses grow by providing the best and highest value marketing services to our clients. Today, for you members out there listening, if you do have a question, please type it into the questions box. You might have to hit the little triangle so it points downwards instead of sideways in the GoToWebinar control panel. Feel free to type those in as they come to you or at the end, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation. So Tyler, can you tell us a little bit more about next generation competitive analysis?
Absolutely, Brandon, and thanks for the introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon and if you're on the West Coast this morning. I'm really excited to talk to you today about really the next generation of competitive analysis, and most importantly, how we can help you apply it to your business to improve against all of your competitors. And so this is, like Brandon mentioned, one of four webinars we're going to have in this series, and they're all to some degree about competitive analysis. So we're excited to have you hear about this one, and the next one that we'll be having will be also diving a little bit deeper into some more areas where we can really supercharge your growth. So as we take a look at competitive intel, one of my favorite quotes about all of it is from Bill Hoffman, and he's the president of analytics at U.S. Bank. He's had a history of great success in this regard, and he smartly and intelligently said, high school football teams know more about their rivals than do most businesses. And what's so funny is that high school football teams have access to less information about their rivals than small business, any business really does today. And so a lot of what I want to do today is to highlight, a new generation of competitive intel, a framework to understand it, and really the application of how to be able to take advantage of all of it. So before we begin, just want to give you a quick summary of Blue Corona, similarly to what Brandon just did. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Blue Corona, we are an analytics and digital marketing company. Analytics is all about translating data into actionable insights. And competitive analysis is one incredible example of that. And another really practical example of that is ad tracking. A lot of companies don't really know which of their advertising and marketing investments are working. So as a service, we overlay our tools and technologies like a net around all the advertising and marketing campaigns to be able to understand which ones are working and which ones aren't. So that's an internal look at it. And then the external side of it is really looking at competitive intel. We're also a full service digital marketing firm, and we can do everything from one of the many services that we have to all of them bundled all together. So a lot of our ACCA member clients like to have the do it for me strategy where we take control of their digital marketing and they can really take advantage of serving their clients and their customers better. And we can really work through our partnerships that way. So like I mentioned a couple of slides ago, we've got three key things I want to be able to cover today. First, I want to talk about the evolution of competitive analysis because it's important for us to know where we came from to understand where we are today. Second, I want to be able to introduce a new framework for competitive analysis. And so it'll be important for us to overlay that onto the evolution of competitive analysis And a new framework's important because there's this ocean of data, publicly available data available to us. But if we don't know how to make any sense of it, it's kind of garbled. And so that's really where this framework comes in. And last and most importantly is the application of it, how we're going to be able to take the framework, put it into use, and then help you beat your competitors with it. All right, so let's dive in. Let's talk first about the evolution of competitive analysis. And to do that, I want to take you back to the 1960s and the 1970s. Let's talk about this beautiful airplane. Does anybody remember this? This is the SR-71 Blackbird. And this thing was built in 1966 to do just one thing: collect competitive intel. It's a spy plane. And this is maybe my favorite plane in the whole fleet. It flew at 85,000 feet. And from that height, 16 miles in the air, it could read a license plate. I think that's pretty freaking cool. And again, that's technology that existed in the 1960s and 1970s. And we never lost one in combat because it could just outfly anything that got shot at it. Now, we've taken these out of commission because technology has been changing, and competitive intel comes in the form of satellites and computers. Now, the advances in technology have changed the way we as a nation collect competitive intelligence, and it's also one of the things that's fundamentally changing the way that we as businesses are performing competitive analysis. When you think about the competitive analysis frameworks that are commonly spoken about, I mean, the top two biggies are the SWOT model and Michael Porter's 5 forces model. SWOT's still so popular that Harvard Business Review still sells a product that you can buy to help apply to your company. Now, the great part about these is that they are a nice framework to be able to understand the different parts of how you and your competition work. The downsides of these is that they're sometimes highly subjective, and if you don't organize them well, like we even did in the past, you're going to end up with a lot of, decent ideas that are going to be inward focused and not action oriented. And so with advances in technology, we see advances in competitive analysis. So when we have these frameworks, they've subtly started to become replaced with different intelligent reports like these ones and something like this. With digital competitive analysis, the new next generation of competitive analysis, we can take publicly available information about your company and your competitors and put it into a framework and compare each company in a very objective fashion. So instead of saying, we see Bill's AC repair down the road and they're doing flyers and we think that's a market threat, we can instead start to take a really objective look at what is Bill's AC repair doing online and how can we take advantage of areas that they're not looking at and how can we meet them in areas that they might be investing in. And a lot of this has really been brought about because the way we consume media has changed. And so, like I mentioned earlier, there's an ocean of data available, but it's only available because of the way that we consume our media. And so, back in the, we used to watch TV like this, right? It used to be one gigantic box with 5 channels, everybody huddled around it. And the only way for us to get intel out of it was something called a Nielsen set-top meter. We couldn't actually find any photos of one of these things, and like Bigfoot, I don't think it actually exists. But that was the way that companies got any intel over how their TV shows worked. Well, today, watching TV and interacting with media looks something like this. I don't know about how many of you know this as a reality, but In my home, it certainly is, where the TV's on and we have other devices on at all times. So you've got a little Billy here reading on his tablet, Susie on the iPhone, and Dad here, doing draft picks while, some TV shows on in the background. And the crazy thing about all of these digital media technologies is that they're all tracking you at all times. And so we have now, instead of having 5 channels, we have now thousands. Instead of one screen, we have multiple screens. And we're all connected at all times. I mean, think about the first thing you do in the morning. It's probably something like turn off the alarm on your phone that's sitting next to you and then pull it up and look at Facebook or check the news or something like that. We're connected at all times. And those advances in technology have allowed us to make advances in competitive intel. I mean, you think about, a familiar situation like this, where these kids are probably, uploading what they had for lunch to Snappy Chat or Instagram. And what I think is so profound about this is that every single minute, there are 2.5 million pieces of content posted to Facebook. Every single minute of the day. And this is just the world we live in. And so, the key point here is that everything has gone digital, and we see it everywhere. And the good news is we can start to take advantage of all of this early on and beat the competition. That's why I'm really excited to share this framework with all of you today, because I know you'll take advantage of it and use it to beat your competitors, and they'll be left in the dust. All right. So like I mentioned, we've got a new way of data, and data collection is really at the heart of competitive analysis. So now that we understand we've got this humongous ocean of data, let's talk about how we navigate it through our new framework for digital competitive analysis. Like Brandon mentioned, we're going to be recording this thing, and this next section is going to be like drinking from a fire hose. So I hope you're all paying attention and not in several other tabs at the same time, because we've got a lot of points we're going to hit all at once. And then we're going to repeat it again at the last part when we talk about the application. So we have put together a summary level framework for digital competitive analysis to be able to understand that ocean of data that's available. We've got 5 key parts, and I'm going to highlight what each of those parts are and what they look like here. And what I want to remind you is that this is a summary level look, okay? So we've got, for our clients, and when we've got somebody who comes in and wants to do a paid digital competitive analysis, we can go a mile deep in any of these sections, and then there are additional pieces to be added to this. So the point of this here today is to show you a summary level to be able to understand and navigate those waters, and be able to get your feet underneath you. If you have any more questions at the end, we'll certainly be able to answer them. So again, this framework is going to have 5 key parts. And as we go through this, we're going to fill out this little framework circle with all 5 of those parts. The first piece that we're going to look at is tracking and analytics. So like I mentioned earlier, tracking and analytics is the net that you cast on your website to capture data about your marketing campaigns and your strategies. And not only can we do that around your website, but we can do that around other web properties and social media properties you have too. And like I mentioned a couple slides back, everything's digital. And one of the coolest things about the web is that everything can be measured and tracked. But it can only be done if you have the right tools in place. So when we look at this piece, we're looking specifically, at tracking tools. And they come really in one of 5 different flavors. You've got your basic website activity tools. A lot of you are probably familiar with Google Analytics. You may have some call tracking. And those are great places to go in a crawl, walk, run strategy. This is the best place to start understanding your website activity. But there are other layers you can add on top of that, including audience identification, which are different ways to be able to get better depth on who is coming to your website. Your search visibility, how well you're being found in the search engines. Marketing automation, which allows you to automate some of the marketing efforts that you have, especially around email, and then optimize your conversion rate. So there's a lot of different ways that a lot of different flavors that these tools come in. When we look at measuring tracking analytics, because remember, each one of these sections, we want to focus on something that's that's objective and measurable. We look at really two key things. Are there any tools present, and how many tools are present? Those are the best two places to get started. And what we find as we start to understand how many tools do you or your competitors have, we can also start to understand what tools are in that mix and what does that look like. So are your competitors asleep at the wheel, or do some of them have a very sophisticated tool set? And as we start to unearth some of those elements, we're able to start to see some of that. So that's the first section where we're looking specifically at tracking and analytics. The next chunk that we're looking at of our simplified summary competitive analysis framework is accessibility. And when I mean accessibility, I'm really talking about three key areas. So the first area that we've got is site speed. So your website speed is important to your user experience on the whole. And as we'll get to some of the application section, you'll start to see why it's so important. The next section that we look at in the accessibility is mobile friendliness. How usable is your website on a mobile phone? And then the third one, which is a new one that not too many people are actually talking about, is website security. And if you've seen it before, it's that HTTPS before your URL. And so when we look at accessibility, one of my favorite questions to ask about it is, what is the number one reason that people leave a website? The number one reason that people leave a website is website speed. According to Google, 70% of people say they'll leave a website if it takes too long to load. So that's from a, asking a survey perspective. And what we found in all reality is that 40% of website visitors will leave a site if it takes longer than 3 seconds to load. So if you're investing in growing your website's visitors to get more leads and sales out of it, the website speed is important as we get to the elements. The second part when we look at website accessibility is that mobile friendliness, like we talked about. And again, one of my favorite questions around this one is, how much web traffic do you think comes from mobile devices? And so we're in the 10th year of the iPhone, right? So 2007, I remember when the iPhone first came out, it was like this big rage. Now we're 10 years in and it's kind of old hat. But how much web traffic do you think comes from mobile devices? The answer in 2016, so not even 2017 numbers, is that more than 2/3 of all traffic in the United States came from either a smartphone or a tablet. 2/3. So if your website is not mobile friendly, there's a chance that you're missing out on getting some of this traffic. And even if you are getting it, you're providing a poor user experience that your competitors are probably already providing, that make it easier for your potential customers to go to them versus you. And then the last part of website accessibility is website security. Like I said, this is a newer one. We don't see too many people talking about, but we firmly here at Blue Corona believe that it is the new mobile friendliness. So if you visit our website, www.bluecorona.com, you'll see a little green lock in your browser to tell you that, hey, you've got a secure connection. This is something that Firefox and Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge have started to roll out this year to show, is the website we're accessing secure or not? And then what they've also begun rolling out is a little red exclamation point, where if your website is not secure, this is going to be something that users are going to start to see. And we believe in subtle ways this is going to start to affect user experience and conversion rates, but then we're also seeing changes in terms of search visibility as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. All right, so the first section we covered was tracking and analytics, which talked about do you have tools? Do your competitors have tools? What kind of tools do you have? How many tools do you have? Website accessibility, we talked about site speed, mobile friendliness, and website security. The third part of our framework is web content. And content marketing, I think gets beaten up a little too much. You get all these knuckleheads calling you all day trying to sell you SEO and content marketing. And so what I mean by content is really your home page, your about pages, your service pages, your contact page, your blog posts, your case studies, your white papers, your gallery, any page on your website is what I mean by content. Anything that has text, has images, has anything to be consumed. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is that Google doesn't rank websites, Google ranks web pages. And generally speaking, websites with more pages generate more traffic, more leads, and more sales. All right, let me say that one more time. Websites with more pages generate more traffic, more leads, and more sales. So that's pretty important. If you're trying to grow your business and you want more leads and more sales, well, then you want more traffic, and then to make that happen, you need more pages. So the way we measure content is pretty simple. We look at the number of website pages that you have and your competitors, if you've got a blog or not, the frequency of your blog posts. We also look at inbound links, and we look at average words per page, and kind of look at all of those elements together to see what's the content profile of this website look like, to be able to start to measurably understand, all right, do we have a competitor that's beating us in this arena or not? All right, the fourth element of our framework is search visibility. So this ties really well into content. And in one of our future webinars, we're actually going to combine content and search visibility and go a mile deep into them. And so when we talk about search visibility, one of the most important facts to know is that 70% of all web traffic comes from search. Let me repeat that one more time. 70% of all web traffic comes from search engines. Okay, Google alone accounts for over 90% of global organic search traffic. And people using the search engines have intent, and they demonstrate their intent to go, do, and buy with keywords that they use. Okay, so we got this next little section, I think, does a really great job of describing, again, some of those intent sections, and we borrowed this from our partners at Google. Again, search visibility helps answer the questions of I want to know, I want to go, I want to do, or I want to buy, right? So for all of us here, the most important intent that we're trying to answer is the I want to buy. But there's a lot of times where we can help facilitate the I want to know and the I want to do parts, especially for HVAC contractors and companies throughout the country. So as we measure search visibility, we want to look at the top 10 rankings on Google for 200 target keywords. So what we'll do as we do these competitive analyses is kind of put a big bucket of 200 target keywords together and look at, out of those 200, what percentage do you and your 3 competitors rank in the top 10 on Google for? And that allows us, paired with those content scores from the previous section, to be able to understand, is somebody doing something intelligently with content that's getting them better search visibility or not? And so that's really where those two become paired very well together. All right, so we've talked about tracking and analytics, accessibility, content, search visibility. The last one we're going to look at is social audience and reviews. Again, this is a summary look at a framework that can help navigate the ocean of data that's out there. There are many other facets that we can look at, and we've seen these 5 really be the greatest place to make the biggest impact and to get you started. But when we talk about social audience and reviews, it's really the size of your social audience and the sentiment of their reviews. So who here has a Facebook account? We're not in a big room, so I can't ask for a raise of hands, but it's probably everyone. And what we've seen from Pew Research Center is that 79% of all online adults use Facebook. Not only have an account, but also use it regularly. And with Facebook, we see it not only as a way to generate a handful of leads, but it is one part news, one part entertainment, and one part customer service. I mean, just look at some of these customer service interactions, right? So when we look at, this is our president, Ben, tweeting at Southwest Airlines. He called them to try to get early bird check-in and to make all that, and to pay them money to make that happen. And nobody would answer his phone calls. He tweeted at Southwest Airlines, and surely enough, minutes later, they tweeted right back at him and were able to get him the information that he needed. And when we look at Facebook, we see this happening with reviews where neighbors ask one another, hey, do you have any recommendations for X, Y, or Z? I don't know if you guys are familiar with Nextdoor, which is the social media app for neighborhoods. There are recommendations just like this throughout that as well. And here's another great example of one for health insurance recommendations for businesses, right? So this isn't just for HVAC and all of that, but there are people asking really interesting queries for all sorts of different recommendations. And so as we look at measuring social, we first want to look at audience size. So we look specifically at Facebook and LinkedIn since they're the biggest ones. How big is your audience size? And then we also look at the reviews on those social media platforms. So we see really reviews coming in one of 2 flavors. First, there are the client and customer reviews. And then there are employee reviews, which is a newer frontier that we're embarking on. So with client and customer reviews, we see those happening on, you got those on Google, on Facebook, on Yelp, Angie's List. Those are great places to look at all those reviews. And on employee reviews, we see those on Glassdoor and other employee and employment service websites as well. So reviews matter, and external reviews matter because 84% of consumers trust online reviews as much as a personal recommendation. So when we talk about reviews on Facebook, on Google, on Angie's List, on any of those, 84% trust those as much as a personal recommendation from a neighbor. So when we're talking about using referrals and word of mouth as a way to generate business, well, this is a great way to complement that. And so when we look at measuring those, we want to measure the ratings, so the count of the number of reviews you have, as well as the average review, both of the customers and of employees. So the best place to look for the customer ones are, again, Facebook and Google+, Angie's List, and on the employees, Glassdoor is the new place to look for all that. Okay, so we talked about the 5 key parts of the framework and why they're all important. We've got tracking and analytics, accessibility, content, search visibility, social, and reviews. Now let's talk about how we actually apply this and put it into practice. So let's talk about the first section, which is tracking analytics. So the output of what we look at when we look at the competitive analysis and tracking analytics looks something like this. where we can show you what your company and your competitors look like as a count of tools. And like I mentioned earlier, underneath all of that is how many tools and how sophisticated they are. So what we might see is that, company B and company C here are pretty big competitors who've got, a full-time marketing analytics person on staff, and they're able to manage a whole suite of tools that might be very sophisticated, whereas, company D just has somebody who keeps slapping tools on there and doesn't know what to do. So as we start to unveil what kind of tools we've got, we can start to figure out how do we outsmart the competition just by understanding how much do they have and how sophisticated are some of those tool sets. When we look at website accessibility, again, there's those three parts to website accessibility. We've got site speed, mobile friendliness, and website security. We also want to look at graphs like this, where we're looking at a website speed from both a mobile perspective as well as a desktop perspective. And so on this one, we see that, our company, the top one, has a okay set of scores. We've got a 30 on mobile and a 35 on desktop. Company B and C, right? Remember the ones who had a lot of tracking tools? Well, they are slow as molasses. And company D is pretty fast. But one of the other elements and insights to add on top of here is that we want the desktop speed to be at least 80 and the mobile speed to be at least 70. So no one here is winning. And that allows us to make great strides in terms of improving our website speed to beat our competitors. Same kind of thing happens when we look at mobile friendliness and website security. So we see a lot of competitive landscapes look something like this, where we've got everyone who's mobile friendly. Right? Mobile friendliness became a part of Google's search algorithm back in 2015. So if you're not mobile friendly, the time to become mobile friendly is right now. But then what we also start to see is that some companies are starting to adopt website security as one of their strategic priorities. And so we see that, we aren't secure. It's the little red lock there versus two of our competitors that are. And so maybe that's an opportunity for us to leapfrog at least company B and not be the landscape laggard. And like I mentioned earlier, mobile friendliness matters. So this is a look at one of the websites that we converted over to mobile friendly. Right there. I can point you to the moment that we did it. And overnight, their number of visits doubled. Now, what's even more interesting is that we see something similar happening with website security. And included in that group is our website. So we converted our website last year to HTTPS, and pretty much within a week or two, we saw a 30% bump in the number of visits and then the number of leads that we got out of our website due to that one change. Now, it's not a silver bullet, but it is something that very much keep in mind. And as we're converting more of our clients' websites over to HTTPS, we're starting to see increases in traffic that way. All right, let's talk about content and the application there. So this guy is a pretty complex graph that we've got that shows all the different elements of website content and what we're looking at there. So if you remember at the beginning, we saw company B and company C have a lot of tracking analytics tools, but also very slow websites. We saw that company B did not have a secure website, so they may be the one to beat. But then here on the site content, well, they have a pretty decent amount of content involved there. So they've got a lot of pages. They've got the largest average number of words per page. But we are actually the winner in the number of inbound links. And of those companies that are blogging, us and company B and company D, all three of us are blogging 4 times a month. So, again, this gives us a purview as to, all right, how big is everyone else's website how much are they making an investment into content marketing? And with a smart content audit, be able to understand what it is that they're doing and, again, how we can outsmart it. All right, so now that we've looked at site content, let's look at search visibility. Now this is, again, that big one where over 70% of all web traffic comes from search engines. And this is, again, the look of, out of that bucket of 200 keywords that we take a look at, what percentage of them do we rank in the top 10 on Google for? Because that's important because over 80% of the clicks do not make it to page 2. So we want to make sure we're on page 1 and we're always inching up there. And so, again, what we see here is that company C is a winner. They're somebody we definitely want to keep an eye on as they've made a small investment in content, big investment in tracking and analytics. They're ahead when it comes to mobile friendliness. They're slow though, so that may be a place for us to win and somebody else that we can copy and steal some ideas from. But it's really as we start to layer all of these parts of our framework together that we're able to start to see, all right, they're the ones to beat and here's what they're doing. Company B, who's made a huge investment in the content, may have been making the wrong kind of investment in the content. Somebody may have given them the idea to just blog 4 times a month and you'll get more traffic. Well, that's not necessarily true if it's not optimized well for search engine, whereas company C may have somebody smart, at the wheel, and our company maybe, we've been investing in it, seeing that number grow, and now this gives us a chance to beat all of that. All right, in applying that last section, social audience and reviews. The first section we want to look at is how big of an audience do we have? And then that second piece is what does the average reviews look like? And so what we see here is that there are really no members of our competitive landscape that have more than 1,000 followers on Facebook and more than 300 followers on LinkedIn. So everybody's got a relatively small audience that they're working with. And then what we do is we can actually overlay on top of that how many employees do they have based on their LinkedIn counts. And so we've got the smallest social audience, and what we may want to strategically do is take a look at, well, what is company C and company D doing with their audiences, and are they getting anything out of that? And if not, well, their bigger audience may not be better for them. Again, these are just some of the different nuances as we start to go through each of the different parts of the competitive landscape and understanding what we're looking at and how it all applies. All right, so I know I just hit you all with a fire hose. We talked through all 5 parts of our competitive framework. We talked about tracking analytics, accessibility, content, search visibility, and social and reviews. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I wanted to highlight 3 key things, and this is really the starting point of the rest of our webinar series on competitive analysis. So today we wanted to cover the evolution of competitive analysis, and we talked through how all of that came to be, and the fact that we are now in a digital age where everything is trackable and measurable, and that we've got this ocean of data that we can navigate, and we need a framework to do that. So our basic framework to do that is looking at you and your competitors, tracking and analytics, accessibility, content, search visibility, social and reviews, and most importantly is really applying all of that to be able to take advantage of that framework. So being able to look at, like we did in those last few slides, what are each of those graphs looking like, and then how can we take advantage of what some of our competitors are doing or not doing to be able to do that. All right, so I know we hit you with a lot, and I know there's a lot of ways to measure this. And so what we're doing as part of our sponsorship with the ACCA this year is we're actually offering a complimentary summary digital competitive analysis to every single member who requests one between now and the end of the year. So if you'd like to take a look at, like to have us put together that report for you that shows you each of those 5 sections in a little bit more depth, we'd love to put one in your hands. And we're doing this specifically and exclusively with the ACCA this year because we know you'll take advantage of it. And so if that's something that you'd be interested in, head over to www.bluecorona.com/ACCA and fill out the form right there in the middle. And our team of analysts will put it all together for you. And we'd love to put that in your hands. Again, it's 100% complimentary, no hard sales pitch. We just want you to be able to understand how you look in your competitive landscape and how you can beat your competitors. And with that, I want to thank you all for your time today. I hope you learned a lot, and we'll flip it back over to you, Brandon, for Q&A.
Thank you, Tyler. That was awesome. Folks, if you've got a question, you can go ahead and click that little triangle next to the questions tab and then go to webinar control panel and type them in. And while those trickle in, we already had one come in already, or a few come in already, and one of them was if we can get these slides in a PDF. As Tyler mentioned, if you head on over to that www.bluecorona.com/ACCA, we'd be happy to send you these slides and anything you need. Just fill out that form and we'll get that over to you. And while those, secondly, while those questions trickle in, I want to tell you about our next webinar that's scheduled for Wednesday, September 27th at 2 p.m., so a couple weeks from now, where Tyler will be discussing how your website speed and security might be sabotaging your sales. So again, kind of getting a little bit more in depth into that accessibility section. So keep an eye out for an email from the ACCA with a registration link. And with that, we did have some questions come in, Tyler. I think this is a good one to start with. How does someone know where to start? What would be the highest priority item when comparing their website to their competitors?
That's a heck of a question. I think that Brandon, and thank you for whoever put that question in. And I think when we look at the summary level framework, that's really one of the best ways to get started. And you can go ahead and try to put one together. Again, we're going to have the recording so you can follow along with it. Or you can go over to www.bluecorona.com/ACCA and we can put the analysis together for you. It's really it depends. I hate to get too technical. It all depends on the competitive landscape. So we've seen, as we looked at, different member companies and throughout the country, we see each locality have its own unique opportunities with it. And so I think the best place to start would be just requesting the complimentary analysis. We'll put one together for you and show you where to start. Again, the beauty of this framework is that it's simple enough yet in depth enough where we can start to really make some clear action on it. So I hope that was as clear as I could have made it.
Okay, another one that came in regards to mobile friendliness. Someone wants to know, what's more important, website speed or usability for the customer or the visitor?
Ooh, that is a tough balance. I'd say both. Speed is a function of usability. And at the end of the day, we want the website to be as usable and as friendly for somebody as we can have it. So let's say it's on their mobile phone. We're in a beautiful fall season now. We've got all these crazy hurricanes, but as winter comes around, somebody wants their furnace repaired. We want them to be able to open their phone and be able to make that click to call and be connected to a CSR as soon as possible. So everything that comes together to make all that happen is important. Not only the speed at which the website comes up, but the ability for them to make that quick click to call right at the top.
Okay, another one that we had. Do you think that trying to rephrase it in the best way, that the green lock and the red exclamation point, do you think those are going to eventually become even more apparent to the users other than just available in the browser?
Wow. I don't know. That's a really good one. I don't know. I think what we've started to see is that websites that are HTTPS are preferred in the search engine results. They typically rank higher, and the rankings on the first page are becoming more and more all HTTPS. So I think you're going to start not getting traffic if you're not secure. I don't know about a user experience perspective though, if we'll start to see those more prominently. Maybe we'll see the whole little navigation bar turn green versus turn red. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. They like to keep those things secret.
Okay. And looks like we got one final question to wrap it up here. How many reviews until my company shows up in the Google local pack?
Oh, wow. We actually wrote an article about that, and it was, I think it's on ie3media.com. So if you head over there, I believe we published the article in July or August. You have to excuse me on not knowing that exact date. What we found, so we studied a couple hundred ACCA members and how well they ranked in that Google Maps local pack. And what we found is that you need to get on average at least 10 to be found in the local pack as we put together that study. But if you head over to ie3media.com and look at, you can use the little search bar in the top right corner, you'll be able to pull up that article that gives you more detail on all that.
Great. Well, that takes care of all the questions. So Tyler, I think we are done. I want to thank everyone for coming. Again, we will be hosting another webinar in partnership with the ACCA and Blue Corona on Wednesday, September 27th. Again, keep an eye out for those emails from ACCA. That should be arriving in your inbox. And of course, again, if anyone has any questions for Tyler, myself, or anyone else here at Blue Corona, or you want to get that complimentary digital competitive analysis and see what all the other contractors in your area are doing, feel free to head over to www.bluecorona.com/ACCA, and we'd be happy to help you out. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and stay safe if you're in the Southeast, Florida, and in the Gulf.